I think the biggest innovations in IPX at the moment are primarily around the launches of LTE roaming. LTE roaming has seen IPX become a reality. It's a service which has kind of crystallized the IPX delivery method and the model under which IPX is going to be brought to market, because it is the first service which is mass market IP-based communications. However, the real value of IPX, I think, is in delivering interconnect on IP services. It was what it was originally established for. We worked on an IPX around 2007 within the GSMA to deliver a way of interconnecting IP transported TDM voice, CS voice within mobile operators, but also to fixed operators and over-the-top players. The fact that that hasn't happened at quite the rate that we expected it to kind of suggests more about the IPX market and the nature of the interconnect market more broadly. But when we move to voice over LTE as the next step beyond just LTE roaming, voice over LTE has to be delivered via an IP interconnect, otherwise all of the value associated with voice over LTE is washed away in the force back to TDM when the voice call is interconnected from one operator to another. IPX providers need to make sure that they are prepared for what comes next in the roaming market. There is a significant trend around local breakout, which I think will become larger as time goes on. It's driven through regulation, it's driven through a change in service offering. It's also driven by the fact that more and more the integration between cellular and Wi-Fi is taking place, and the Wi-Fi charging model for a customer who's overseas is essentially the same as when they're in the home network. So there's a whole change in the commercial model, which means that the logic of transporting traffic over what some cases can be expensive international links suddenly means that you want to offload the traffic as closely as possible, whether you're on a Wi-Fi network or a cellular network. I think the other challenge which IPX providers are going to face is more around the way in which they monetize additional services over and above just straightforward data transport. There's a lot of potential for IPX providers to add value-add services within their domain. But the reluctance of some operators to take that up means that there is a kind of a tug of war between operators maintaining control of services at the edge of the network and IPX providers being able to provide those same functions but in an outsourced way to generate scale across multiple operators in a single point. There is a definitive IPX definition. No, there needs to be a core IPX definition, which is what we have already. There's a number of GSMA documents which define exactly the way that IPX transport works, and those are adopted and reused by the I3F quite widely. The challenge on top of that is for each individual service that comes along, you then need to put a profile or a specific schedule of how that service is managed over IPX. We have a number of those, but really what the problem is understanding what operators want next. Operators are good at innovation when it comes to services which generate ecosystem, but the ecosystem in itself has to be generated by operators agreeing how services pass from one operator to another. It is an alternative. It's an alternative when it comes down to delivering a different kind of product. So you can interconnect any two operators or any two entities over the internet, but the internet is the internet. It's fairly quality of service free. Sometimes it delivers very good quality of experience for certain applications, but there are some things which require harder, crystallized SLAs which have to be nailed down in commercial contract and also be able to be measured. And voice is a classic example. Voice is a great service for internet interconnection in terms of bandwidth because it's relatively thin, but it requires really low latency, and the internet can have massive variations in latency, which is why sometimes you'll get a Skype call that works brilliantly and sometimes you'll get one that's awful. If you apply an IPX-based interconnect to a voice call, then the quality is lifted up because there is an associated SLA with that. And when you have voice delivered by mobile operators being interconnected, then the quality of service gets even better. I think that the reluctance comes from more from the commercial side within mobile operators. So I don't think mobile operators can be considered to be reluctant across the board. Certainly from a technical and a strategic perspective, everybody understands the value of IPX. We as the GSMA don't go out and write definitions for IPX just because we think it's a good idea. Operators come and tell us that's what they want us to do, and they've been telling us that for a number of years. The problem is that when you actually get to the point of trying to launch an IPX commercial interconnect, the people who are in charge of the interconnect product within the operators look at what it's going to cost them to shift from a TDM-based interconnect to an IP-based one, and they have generally got 12-month targets which are prohibitive of a longer-term view on the investment that's required to churn to IP. Because TDM has scale, it has cheap price, and because it has cheap price, it maintains scale. Somehow we need to break that catch-22 to get IP onto the same footing, and at that point we get to the point where IPX becomes a viable commercial product for everybody to adopt. And it's a very sensitive tipping point, but when we reach it, it will happen very quickly.